member from Western Arctic.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise today to speak to the Budget Implementation Bill, a bill that covers a budget that really has no vision and no direction. It's a budget that really represents a scattergun approach to stimulating the economy, one that really will, at the end of the day, at the end of the time when we've spent a considerable sum of the taxpayers' money, not accomplished what we need to accomplish. It was clear on that. It was clear from the very beginning with the economic statement in December that this was going to happen, that this type of situation was going to happen, that we were going to be faced with a budget that simply wouldn't do the job. You can't expect conservative ideology to turn around in 2 months. I'm sorry, that won't happen. You can't expect that people that have built their dogmatic behavior around in the confines of conservatism and neoconservatism will be able to take the finances of this country and put them in a direction that will provide what Canada needs. We knew that. That's why we did what we did in December with the coalition. That's why we knew very well in January that we weren't going to get what was needed for this economy. And today we hear the Liberals say the same thing. Supported the Conservatives last week, doing it for political reasons, but today are saying the same things. This isn't adequate. This isn't enough. We knew that before. We didn't have to wait till it came out. We understand the Conservatives after 3 years in opposition to them in this Parliament. And you know, once again, we saw the mean-spiritedness of a government which would bring in to a budget bill that's designed to stimulate the economy, to get the economy working, full of measures that have nothing to do with that, measures that are really to preserve the conservative ideological base in this country, to pander to those types of support. And we see that so clearly. C-10 attacks women through its assault on pay equity. It really provides nothing to women who would be out of work. We don't see any improvement in EI. We don't see a more understanding nature around childcare. We don't see any of that vision that we need to have for the people in this economy that are going to be most disenfranchised during this downturn. It tears up collective agreements. Madam Speaker, my email box was full with the RCMP officers from my riding, the Northwest Territories, who are saying, look, not only did you cut the agreement for all of Canada, but you also picked on the extra money that's provided to the RCMP for their support of law and order in very isolated places. You know, Madam Speaker, I wish the Prime Minister and his cabinet would have gone into a grocery store in Nunavik before the election and looked at the price of goods for Northerners and understand what it means when you cut back for the professionals that come in to our communities and take care of our communities and provide the service that we hear you talk about so eloquently when it comes to taking credit for anything that they do. This budget weakens control on foreign ownership, especially Air Canada, on a section of our industry which is so transportable, which many of the workers can be replaced by people in other countries. The maintenance work can be done in places that will provide no benefit to the country. We need to hold on to the ownership of our aviation industry. That's not happening. This budget is actually changing that. And it attacks student loan recipients. How low do we want to get? How low do we take this? Well, today I'm going to move a little bit away from that and talk about how the bill attacks the environment through its changes to the Navigable Waters Protection Act. Mr. Speaker, I was in committee, Madam Speaker, I apologize. I was in committee the other day when the minister came and took great pains to say how old this act was, and it dated from the times of our first Prime Minister. And he seemed to just have disdain for it because of its age. You think that this was a good reason to move on from it, to change to something different. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, the fact is this law is one of the oldest on the books, says to me how important the protection of Canada's waterways are. The role of a national government in protecting its waters dates well before Confederation. If you go back to the Magna Carta, they had provisions in there protecting against the construction of fish weirs across the rivers in England. So from day one, we knew that it was so important to look at how our rivers were being taken care of. Despite this historic precedent as to how important the role of a national government plays in protecting water systems, this government wants to eviscerate protection for Canada's waterways. Under the changes the Conservatives want to make, rivers will be only considered navigable under the sole discretion of the minister. No consultation, no forewarning, and no appeal. Not even any limitation on the type of waterway which could be excluded. Under these amendments, it's conceivable the minister could declare the St. Lawrence is not a navigable waterway. What kind of power and authority are we turning over to the minister in this regard? What is this about in this country? We also turn over to the minister the sole discretion to determine whether any proposed work would have an impact on navigation. Once again, without prior consultation, no warning, and no appeal. You know, with this type of amendment, large structures, dams across the river, depending on where they're located, depending on which river they're on, could be considered not having any impact on navigation. The amendments give the minister the authority to change at any time the criteria used in assessing whether a waterway is navigable or whether a type of work may interfere with navigation. Also, once again, without the ability of Canadians to say anything about it, without any ability to appeal these types of decisions on these waterways which so many Canadians hold sacred. Madam Speaker, Canadians identify with their rivers. They identify with the land and the water and the nature that is so important to all of us. Why would Canadians want to see this type of legislation put in place? The minister says these changes need to be made because the law has been holding up vital infrastructure projects. Can the minister name one project which has not gone ahead because of the Navigable Waters Protection Act? Why has the Conservative government put this odious change to laws which protect Canada's natural environment into a budget bill? Could it be because they know Canadians will oppose these changes and will voice strong opposition? So they sneak it through the back door, knowing that the Liberals will support it in order to get the budget passed. This is how they're working. When this bill was reviewed through the Transport Committee in the last Parliament, the committee recommended more consultations, especially with Aboriginal people, especially with recreational users, anglers, canoeists, tourist operators, cottagers, and river advocacy groups. Only one group like that was represented in the committee discussions. The government likes to say it's here for the people, but if it doesn't listen to the people, it's not here for them. Madam Speaker, another way this government isn't listening is its approach to stimulating the economy of the Northwest Territories. For years, people in the government of Nunavut have been calling for a deep-sea port at Iqaluit. Instead, this government is pouring $17 million to a harbour in Pangnirtung on top of the already existing contribution of $8 million last year. After the budget was released, the Premier of Nunavut asked about the funding, was told, use it or lose it. A port in Iqaluit would take too long. Madam Speaker, now Pang needs a small craft harbour and should get a pretty excellent one for $25 million. But all of Nunavut needs a harbour in Iqaluit as well, and that funding could have gone towards making that a reality. Why didn't they do it? Conservatives think they know better than the people of the North. Another example from the North is funding for an Arctic Research Institute. 1 minute? Okay, well, I'll sum up by saying that this budget doesn't work. We're not supporting it. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions and comments? The honourable member from Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Aside from the environmental impact of changes to the Act, to the Navigable Waters Act, there's also a situation here, and this is a question that I have for the honourable member. That Act was originally enacted in 1882. It's one of Canada's oldest pieces of legislation, and there's no doubt that it needs a little modernization. But in the name of cutting red tape to speed up the building of infrastructure projects and stimulate the economy, the government's introducing changes that will remove navigable status from thousands of waterways in Canada. And it's one of the things that isn't talked about that much. It's not a monetary item in the budget. I wonder if the honourable member would have a comment to make on that.
The honourable member from Western Arctic.
Well, certainly I'll go back at it. Once again, what we see here is similar to we see the minister taking on the authority for laying out different conditions under the law, for making changes to things that people hold very valuable without consulting them, without having a process of appeal. This is wrong, Madam Speaker. This is a process that goes against our very democratic nature, and it goes against the sort of strong feeling that people have for our river systems across the country. There's millions of people that use those river systems for navigation in small boats and canoes. These people have rights too, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The honourable member from Burnaby, New Westminster.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Western Arctic for his speech. Brilliant, as always, and he's a very passionate and outspoken advocate for the North. And we appreciate his presence in the House. He brings the North's voice right here to the House of Commons. I'm interested in the Budget Implementation Act, the fact that essentially the Conservatives pulled a fast one. They tucked a whole bunch of things into the Act that obviously Liberals didn't read or didn't care to take the time to understand, including allowing the opportunity for more foreign takeover of Canadian companies, including in the transportation sector. I know the member is the transportation critic for the NDP. Now, my question is simple. Does he think that this allowance for more foreign takeovers is going to be helpful to Canada, helpful for the transportation sector? And second question, why did the Liberals, why are they voting for it and allowing these takeovers to go through?
The honourable member from Western Arctic.
Well, of course, as I pointed out in my speech, the ability of foreign interests to take over companies like Air Canada could mean a significant amount to the workforce that works within the aviation industry. It could mean that we'll be seeing offshore maintenance applied to the aircraft. That could be accelerated through ownership by companies that come from other places. The only hold that we have over the aviation industry right now is that we insist that the majority ownership is Canadian. Now, in some cases, that's already been circumvented by clever legal means, but nonetheless, the principle remains. The aviation industry, being an industry that can utilize services from any part of the world, needs to have a significant portion of the ownership reside within Canada. Why did the Liberals support this bill? You know, I think it goes back to the basics what I was talking about earlier. We simply don't trust the Conservatives to deliver on their promises. We didn't trust the Conservatives to come up with a budget that was a budget that could bring Canadians together. The Liberals made a choice to support the budget for some for the reasons that they felt that it was politically expedient. They've chosen to go into an alliance with the Conservatives to put forth their somewhat considerable connections they have within their ideological grounds as well. So that's